Hello, everybody, and welcome to another CCHI community conversation. My name is Jorge Ungo. I am the CCHI Language Access Advocate, and I am just so thrilled to have brought together these three exceptional individuals who are going to talk to us and to each other, actually, about what they have been doing in different parts of the world to advocate for better working conditions for interpreters and translators. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Carolina Cannard in New Zealand.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Jorge. My name is Carolina Cannard. I am a French and Greek interpreter now living in New Zealand. So greetings to all from New Zealand.
And hello to everyone. My name is Kelly Varguez. I'm a Spanish interpreter joining you from Omaha, Nebraska in the United States, right smack in the middle of the country. And I can't wait to talk to this group of wonderful professionals this afternoon.
And hi, my name is Margaret Spencer. I'm originally from Brazil, grew up in Bolivia and then Wales. That's how I learned those languages. I work right now as a medical interpreter for both those languages, Portuguese and Spanish, at Cambridge Health Alliance. It's a beautifully unique place because it's the only hospital that actually has their #1 needed language for Portuguese, and then Spanish. So it has that uniqueness to it. And then third language is Haitian Creole. So it's a location that has a very robust program for interpreters. And it's an honor to be representing them and meeting you ladies.
I think it's my turn to start my advocacy journey before Kelly and Margareth share their own. I just want to say a very big thank you to Jorge, who has been the sweetest, and a big thank you to CCHI for giving us this platform. This is so awesome. And a big thank you to Ashley. Ashley, if we're going too fast, I don't know, wave, let us know, okay? Thank you for interpreting. So I started my advocacy in New Zealand from my PhD. I have been doing a PhD on the experiences of refugee women with interpreters in New Zealand. And refugee women were telling me that they would go to the hospital, spend 24 hours on site with no interpreter, sometimes in the middle of an abortion, or having to go undergoing surgery without an interpreter before or after. Imagine the trauma of having to, go into surgery without understanding what's happening, without the ability to communicate. And it wasn't one woman, it was many. So this got me thinking, okay, what's happening? And I was sharing those thoughts with my colleagues in New Zealand, and I realized that many are not going to the hospital. Many are not picking up the phone. They're not answering calls because the pay is so ridiculous that it's not worth it. It's not worth it, the professional's time to go on site to the hospital or pick up the phone to assist people in life or death matters very often. So this led me in 2022, 2 years ago, to start a petition. And now I want to say, although I did a petition in New Zealand, I'm not the first one. I have had many colleagues in New Zealand trying to push for the same things. So I'm not the first, which is sad. After I did the petition, I tried to take things one step further. So last year, I made a national call in New Zealand for all colleagues to send me anonymous testimonies about their work experience and pay, to be able to send this with the petition to the New Zealand government to say, look, we have a petition and we have this amount of interpreters who send many, many pages of testimonies to say things are not right. Something is wrong. We need to do something about this. It's not normal to have interpreters who don't go to work when they are needed. And so I assembled the testimonies, the petition. I hired a lawyer to make sure that I do things legally and I'm not doing, anything that I shouldn't be doing. And as we speak now, all of this is within the hands of the New Zealand government. And as far as I know, they are reviewing and they are drafting a report about all of this. So that's it. I hope it was clear. Thank you so much.
That is so interesting. It's so interesting that an exploration of sort of an academic endeavor led you to start speaking up on behalf of your colleagues. And really, what I think has stood out for me the most in my journey with advocacy is that you really are speaking up for people who use your services, whether they are English only speakers. So by extension, they're limited proficiency speakers of all the other languages, or they're a speaker of in your case, French or Greek, and haven't had the chance to perfect their English to the level necessary to conduct important business in New Zealand. So that's pretty fascinating. The way I got into this in the US is I work in the court systems here as a Spanish interpreter. I am a freelance interpreter like most of my colleagues in the state of Nebraska. And I started this work 15, maybe even a little over years ago, because I was interested in a job that paid well enough that I could afford daycare for my children and was flexible enough that I could have sort of a working self, an outside of the home self, and a family life that worked in tandem well. And when I began, I was making, there were people that had gone before me who had gotten us a rate of pay that reflected our level of expertise in order to work in the courts in Nebraska and in many other states in the US. You are required to pass a series of exams. The oral exam is that final level that will make you a certified court interpreter. And there's usually only about a 20% passing rate every exam cycle. We also did some math and realized that in Nebraska, we all language interpreters, ASL included, are available to serve about 5% of the population, but there are only about 30 of us. So the specialization is really apparent when you get those numbers boiled down. You think, my goodness, 30 interpreters to provide services to maybe 300,000 Nebraskans. That's about one interpreter per 300 people. When you break it down, we have, I don't know, probably one judge to every 100 people, something along those lines. I'm not sure if those numbers are exactly perfect. Don't quote me, but you get the idea. So with specialization should come fair compensation, but it hasn't come in Nebraska. And we had been 17 years without a rate increase, even though we are all freelancers, even though in theory it's a free market, even though you would think you should be able to say, my services cost this much to provide, even though we pay health insurance, we pay our own taxes, we pay from that money to perfect our skills, etc. Our rates were suppressed significantly. And I was also not surprisingly watching very good interpreters leave the profession or leave the freelance court environment in order to get full-time employment elsewhere. So those were the concerning trends I noticed. And with a group of very dedicated colleagues, we started a letter writing campaign. We ended up with a senator who introduced some legislation to get us the money we needed. It didn't go as we had hoped. We ended up with a work stoppage where our freelance interpreters didn't go to work. And that resulted in a a very encouraging expression of support from attorneys from both sides of the court event, the prosecution and defense attorneys, as well as a lot of support from the judges. And we were fortunate that because of the support that was expressed and the pain, if you want to say it that way, of not being able to go forward with a significant number of court hearings, and the solidarity that we had from interpreters all across the country, we were able to come to the negotiation table within a week and a half, and we got a 50% increase from what we were making prior to that. So we're still, in the advocacy phases. That portion, that phase of our advocacy had a happy ending, but it sort of was just born out of being boots on the ground and, this isn't okay, and watching the danger of people who need quality interpretation being given subpar services in order to save the state money in a state where there's frankly plenty of money. So
awesome stories. I am taking notes so I learn more. With me at CHA, Cambridge Health Alliance, I think sometimes having that union space, it's just also a safe location to try to advocate for yourself. So our supervisor actually allowed a team of interpreters. We went as individual together to one of the union meetings. And it was the same thing, trying to bring that dignity in the salary. And I think when we speak, I see that similarity in that desire for that recognition. And back when we started, it was a program that our hospital had offered for those with the national certification. And we are very aware of that post-pandemic mass exodus out of the healthcare system. It didn't happen only to healthcare providers like doctors and nurses, but also happened to the interpreter services too. People looking for more flexibility and different areas, also with that same purpose in trying to match their qualifications to their salary. But after that first initial meeting, our supervisor said, well, okay, I'm glad you guys got it out of your system. But you have to choose one person to continue. And that's when my coworkers chose for me to represent them. And in this particular hospital that I am a union rep for in my department, I have some colleagues that feel like union is like one of those necessary evils. Others like, I don't like unions, but thank you for, working on my behalf. But even those that really don't like union, they express that need in not just our own hospital, but the greater Boston area. I think the hiring processes are still not recognizing sometimes all the training that one goes through. And they put the ones with that initial 40-hour classes together with somebody as extensive training as we know we can have, and have decades of experience. Many of my coworkers, I'm so proud of my coworkers. So for me to represent them was an honor, but also a challenge. It's not a very comfortable place. And I really usually try to work at disarming after these meetings, but it's so worth it. I do know that union also does represent that togetherness, that solidarity that we need when we go representing others. That sort of backing up is vital for the success of what you're trying to advocate for and who you're representing. And it's not just the population that we serve, but also that continuous education and that, I would say, dignity in the salary that we all sort of search for. And so that has been a bumpy road. We have had some really positive, I would say, turnout. It was the end of last year when our union renewed the contract, and our interpreter department was brought to parity with the other hospitals. So that was a very big win. And we are still working, hoping that as a department, because that's the interesting thing, we're one department with three different unions, because we are in three different hospitals. So the interpreting department is still just one. But we still do wish to have that standardized training for medical interpreters, not just the type of interpreter that may help a school. You know, they each have their own area, but we do hope that that could be changed in legislation and just sort of go farther into the law.
That's fascinating. I can say that in Nebraska, we do not have a union. We essentially are functioning as a union, and as an ad hoc union rep, I could say I very much respect what you're doing. Not to say I'm actually I'm not at that level, but even the taste of it I've had, just brings into focus how important solidarity is and how essential it is to hang together and stay on the same page, because when that starts to crumble, the only people that win are the people who are devaluing our services. So what you do in your union or individually is just really, I think, inspiring and very important for the profession.
Yeah, I would love that this conversation actually does continue, not just as a local union or our health alliance that we have at Cambridge, but definitely I feel that you have been empowered, and this is a good moment. I think we have a good momentum, better said, to learn from each other and share more experiences. I know that the little time that we have left goes by so fast, but definitely, I know Carolina was mentioning that she has a large group that usually follow these meetings in Australia as well, and they're trying to get some. Go ahead, Carolina, I'll let you share on that. But I think this is actually a good point, that more conversation, not just in national level, but international, for this group that is extra trained, especially when you're dealing with refugees. And just we also have this large influx of migration into the States, and some of the trauma that goes into this immigrants. You do need the better prepared interpreter, whether in court or in a hospital or in surgery. And it is a nice time, with the know-how that you already have picked up, to try to put this into national standards or international standards and legal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelly and Margaret, because it's awesome to see that we all try in our own way to push forward, right? We all try to do something because we care and we believe in the importance of our industry. I just want to add as a note, since we've been talking about unions, that in New Zealand there is no union. And this is also why I have been doing what I'm doing on a, I'm not going to say solo way, because my colleagues have been incredibly supportive, and this was a collective effort 100%, but we don't have a union, and this is a big problem. The only body that represents us is the NZSTI, New Zealand Society of Translators and Interpreters, and everyone is a volunteer. And it's hours and hours of free work for the profession. And creating a union would mean that, again, we need volunteers to create the union. And it's a big problem for us trying, to work every day, do the best for our work and family and individual selves, plus do a union or be within a society and push. So this is something that we need to take into account, that it's a collective effort, but sometimes it's hard because you can only volunteer so much. After that, you're gonna implode. So yeah, just a side note, so for those who are not in New Zealand, so for them to understand how we are at the moment.
I think what you're saying about finding balance and making sure you can stay on top of things so that, things don't fall apart is so essential. I think that for people in situations like ours, I got very good advice from a mentor once who, after our big win, I said, and we won and we got this raise and I'm so excited. I'm thinking about my colleagues and what they're going to spend their money on. And, I'm recruiting people because finally people are interested in this job, etc. And my mentor said, careful, careful, careful. Remember, this type of a feeling can become addictive. So don't forget to build in some sort of sustainability so that it doesn't have to be you all the time. And I think when I reflect on our situation in my particular state, like I said, in 2004, whatever that 20 years ago now, at that point in time, we did have a very strong cohort of leadership. And then that just over time, it wasn't sustainable. And those of us, including myself, who were working in the courts were kind of complacent. I know my attitude for a long time was, oh, I can't ask for any more than this money, or, oh, what if they take it all away? Or, what if everyone says, oh, you should just learn English? And I hate that, etc. So a lot of it was on our collective shoulders that we were in the situation that we were in. So one thing I am working on at this point is figuring out a way to build in a sustainable rate increase that doesn't require as much heavy lifting as it did this time around. All interpreters in my state will always have to be sort of aware of what's going on with our program. That won't go away. But I do want to build in some sort of automaticity so it doesn't have to be quite this intense every time. So I guess that brings me to a question for both of you. Have you reflected on that at all? I mean, for you, Margaret, is having a union in itself more sustainable than an ad hoc advocacy network like Carolina and I have? Carolina, in your situation, do you have people that you can kind of pass the baton to? Or are you still in a point where you're trying to identify them? That would be my question for you.
So it's actually a really good question, because understanding union, union also has its cons. We do see the pros, but union also dictates so much the flexibility that we wish for. And I know a lot of interpreters left something as a 9 to 5 because they were looking for more flexibility. And I know that a lot of our my coworkers, they're actually per diem because then it gives them that flexibility that they need. So there are moments that you could say that union falls into a mold that we don't want, even though it will have something that as you mentioned, looking into something, Kelly, that will sort of do that automated percentage of raises. It's still we are looking for, I would say, that recognition, that standard recognition, instead of, let's say, that third party testing that sometimes is required, that we pass for working in a hospital, but not taking into consideration the much more heavier training that others have had. And so that is what we're still looking. And I think recognition and that salary present and future is something that I don't know what would look like in New Zealand and Australia as a union, but that is something that could be thought from the beginning.
I mean, you know, it's crazy. It's this all makes me think a lot, and it also makes me realize how little I know, because you know I want to make sure I say to the people watching us today that in my personal, you know, scale, I am not a superwoman. The industry is huge and complex, and I know this much. So Kelly, you were asking me, have you found like the people to support you and the, you know, to you know, pass on what you're doing in your advocacy? And Margaret, you were talking about the union, and the only answer I could find while I was trying to push with my colleagues is to try to identify who has the power to bring change and who is influential and contact them. And then push. Because oftentimes the people who have the power, for example, in the government to really bring deep systemic change do not always understand the parameters around which we are working. And sometimes just contacting them and trying to explain why we do what we try to do, not just because we want to be rich, you know, but because the system is not sustainable, is something. And this is something that all of us can do. You don't have to become an advocate and be high profile to push. If you work in a hospital, you can contact, you know, your head of department. If you are in court, like Kelly, you can try to find a senator who is like a kind, or you know, an attorney who is you know, understanding of our role, and flick them an email or try to contact them. So these are little things that all of us, we have people we work for who we know care and want to help or understand. So yes, try to find those people and then push. That's all I can say. And hoping it works out, because you know, there's no guarantee it's gonna work out, but at least let's try, right?
Yeah, finding the key people that understand, I think, is one thing that I actually went to my main manager, and I'm like, I know you've had this conversation with main administration of the hospital. It's like, but I need to figure out their language. Because it is going in there with a different language and trying to get them to understand what it is that we mean, what it is that we're representing, what kind of training we have had. So finding that right person and how to communicate and convey that message in the 10 seconds that they sort of have a span of listening and attention would be, I think, our next great challenge.
Come to the end of our time, and I want to thank all three of you for a really rich conversation. There's so much work out there to be done, and the three of you have really demonstrated to us how you know, small steps can really lead to big change. So I want to thank all three of you on behalf of CCHI, on behalf of the thousands of professionals out there, you know, working and wondering, you know, what's going to happen, how do we make change. I think you all have really inspired folks, and also on behalf of the populations that we all serve. You know, at the end of the day, that's the true reason why we do what we do, and why you're advocating the way that you are, so that we can continue to serve them in the best way that we can. So to the three of you, I want to say just a heartfelt thank you for joining us for this conversation. I also want to say a big thank you to Hello Interpreters, our ASL sponsor, for helping us to make this event more accessible. And this is being recorded. This will be available on YouTube. So just know that you're not only reaching the folks that are here with us live, but you're going to reach so many professionals in the future. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for everyone that joined us. Have a wonderful weekend.